What's happening, people? Welcome to Throwback Thursday. That's when I take a video that I've made several years ago, remix it, clean it up, make sure you have all the current good information on it. A couple of things I felt the need to mention for this video is, number one, there are a few different fuel pumps that I now use I say is okay. If you're doing performance mods, we use the Dutch Works fuel pump. Marlboro is a good fuel pump. Bosch is like the OEM fuel pump. And if you don't have any performance mods, there's an inexpensive pump on eBay called Herco. I do buy and install them. Very seldom had any issues with them. So those are kind of your fuel pump options. One thing that you want to be extra careful with and make sure you do not do is mess up those fuel lines. There's a special clip in this video that shows you how to release those fuel lines, making sure you don't damage them. Only place you can get these fuel lines nowadays are out of a salvage yard, and if you mess up a fuel line, that's going to be a tough thing to do. You also need to know that a new fuel pump assembly has an extra ground wire in the harness. That is something that Volvo started doing maybe 2003, 2004-ish, maybe a couple years before that. But your 850s, S and V70s prior to 99, 2000 did not have that extra ground wire plug on the harness. You can wire that to the car somewhere, or you can ignore it because, again, the older cars, none of the 850s had a ground wire that went to that harness. So you'll see that extra little piece on your wire harness. Use it or not, doesn't matter. I've never hooked one of those up for anybody. So that pretty much covers it. If for some reason you need to contact me directly at the very end of the video, you will get information that tells you how to call, text me, email, stuff like that. And as always, thanks for your support. Please like and comment. That helps me in the algorithm, and I hope this video helps you out well. I posted this video yesterday. In less than a day, I got a very important question, and that is, what if you have an all-wheel drive vehicle? V70R, XC70, V70 XC, S70 all-wheel drive, V70 all-wheel drive. A lot of those are GLTs. In some countries, they're NAs. You need a different video. It is linked in the description area. So if you got an all-wheel drive vehicle, check that link out. If you have a front-wheel drive vehicle, this is the video for your fuel pump. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Before you determine that it's 100% the fuel pump is bad, you do want to go in here and either replace the fuel pump relay or pull it and jump the pins to see if that fuel pump is running at all. If your fuse is good and you jump the relay and you still don't hear no fuel pump, then go ahead and order you a fuel pump. On this video, I'm going to remove and replace the fuel pump unit on this Volvo 850. You open up the back, you remove the cargo flooring, you access the fuel pump access panel, and then you unscrew the cap on it. You do not have to drop the fuel tank. The wires are outside of that area in the cargo area, so you unplug them and you make sure you got a good seal when you put it all back together. The only complicated thing about it is if you decide to replace the pump inside the housing unit instead of the entire pump assembly. Let's get started. Here are the tools you'll need, or I recommend when you do the fuel pump replacement job, especially if you're going to replace the pump and not the whole assembly. I use that style oil filter wrench to actually get the fuel tank pump assembly cap off. You want some snips so you can cut your wire ties. You want a 10 millimeter boxing and a 10 millimeter ratchet. I use those long curved needle nose pliers actually to help me get the fuel lines off of the top of the pump assembly. Then I use that little screwdriver to open up the clamshell, help get that stuff loose from the fuel pump once I'm inside. Some rubber gloves, some wire ties, and some kind of lubrication or lubrication spray to put on the seal to get the seal back in, because you want a tight seal and you don't want to do that with a dry one. When you know you got to get a pump, it's always best to get good quality parts. Bosch is the OEM pump that came out of this car, so we went back in with a Bosch. And there may be a couple others, but I highly recommend that you do not get a cheap and expensive pump somewhere that you got to build into the unit. Go ahead and get you a good Bosch pump or something equivalent. There's some numbers off the box there, and it just dropped in nice and easy with no issues at all. So to access the fuel pump, you fold down your rear seats, you come in the back of the car, and you lift this panel up and out and fold that panel all the way up on the seats that you've folded down like that. Next, you can go ahead and remove this piece of carpet piece. Since this car had the jump seats in it, you got to loop it around the little seat belt things there. And then the fuel pump access door will be right there. Get to the fuel pump unit, that's the access there, and you use a 10 millimeter to pull those 5 bolts off. You don't have to drop the fuel tank. Now that we have the cap off of this, I looked down at the actual fuel cap, and it has some markings on it with some numbers. So you can make a notation of the numbers and the orientation of how these lines are, so when you put it back together, you put it back in the right angle. Next thing you do is disconnect the lines from the top of the fuel unit. To get the fuel lines released from the top of the fuel pump, same thing for your fuel filter. You want to take some hooked needle nose pliers or a trim clip puller or something like that, and you want to get them under the line a little bit like this and just work it right up. The lines come right off. So that's how you get these fuel lines off of these pumps and fuel filters, stuff like that. It's pretty easy when you got this hook tool to just pry under them and lift those lines off. And then when you go to put them on, just press them back on. They have a built-in release in them. When you pry that up, it just takes care of the release, so you can pry those things off. If you grab the ends up here, you can break the fuel line or the connection, and they'll slide off. Now the next thing you need to do is get the ring loose from the top of the fuel pump unit. Now in this Volvo 850, you got a couple of fuel vacuum lines that run along this cap, and you don't want to damage them. So be careful when taking this tank cap ring off. I have one of these type of oil filter wrenches, and those are good for grabbing that thing and twisting that loose. Now that I got the ring loose, I'm going to pull the wire and disconnect the wire. The plug should be right around there. When I followed the cord up, I had to detach the plugs from this little wall clip, and then there has a little zip tie there, and it's the one with the red wire going into the gray plug is the one that I need to disconnect and free. Yeah, I pulled the ring off, I got it unplugged, now I'm going to lift it out. Here's the fuel pump unit, and as you can tell, it does not have the fuel sending unit attached to it. That's in another access panel under the trunk. So this is just the fuel pump thing. The assembly slides out the bottom, and that's the fuel sock. We're going to unplug the fuel pump leads. You can't get them mixed up. You got a positive and a negative. If you get them mixed up, the pump right run backwards. Then you have the fuel line there that attaches to the top of the pump up there to the line. So I'm going to take that line loose, and I'm going to disconnect those 2 wires. Then I'm going to unlatch this assembly here and here and slide the assembly out. This wire here on this side had a release tab that I had to push from the other side to get it to release from the prong in there. And they're different size, so it should be hard to mix them up when you put the new fuel pump in. I pushed those tabs in, started to slide that unit out. So I pushed each side in with a flat tip screwdriver. Be careful you don't try to push it too hard. You don't want to crack your assembly. As you see, the unit has some kind of spring-loaded clip in there. You got your fuel line that you'd have to swap over to a new pump. It has a clamshell type releases, so you can push those releases and open it up to get it to fuel pump. Now we actually have a whole fuel pump unit assembly, but I'm going to take this apart so you can see what it looks like with the pump out. I took a flat tip screwdriver, push it on the ends to free those. Then there's another latch at the very bottom there, and you can get this open on both sides that way. So you got the bottom lock, then those two latches. So you got your sock there, some kind of rubber gasket to absorb vibrations on the bottom. Then you got this kind of like a shock absorber at the top of it to keep it pressed down toward the bottom of the tank. If you're going to just replace the pump, this is what you're dealing with. But as I explained, we have the whole unit here. So I'm going to go ahead and lubricate the seal and transfer this over into the car and hook it up and test it out. In putting in this fuel pump unit in, the first thing I did was lubricate the seal, set the seal on top of the tank. Then I set the sending unit down and snugged it in as tight as I could, just pushing it in. Then I thread the wire through the cap and I screwed the cap on. Be extra careful when screwing that cap on so you don't get it cross-threaded. You don't want to mess up the plastic in the cap. And then you remove the dust caps and install your fuel line before you get the cap all the way tightened down. Just in case you have to pivot that fuel pump unit in a little bit, twist it clockwise or counterclockwise to make sure that lines up. So I'm going to pull the dust caps off. I'm going to connect the fuel lines, plug in the electrical plug, and I don't have it all the way tight yet, but we're going to make sure the car starts. Okay, we're going to turn the key, listen for the pump to prime. Sound like it's priming. Alright, shut it off. Got a little bit of a fuel leak here, so one of these lines are not down all the way. So we're going to make sure those fuel lines are down all the way and start this over. Had a slight leak coming out of one of the fuel lines. I think this fuel line wasn't far enough to the front. So this line here looks like it's almost pointed back to the most rear part. But you want to line these lines up to make sure that they'll go all the way on those line ports, because if they don't, you'll have a leak and you'll be pulling it back up. So you may want to connect those lines, make sure they're all the way seated before you tighten the cap all the way down. Once you have your fuel lines on and you're ready to try to start the car, you want to prime the fuel system first. And how you do that is you turn the key on but don't start it. You let the pump run, and when you don't hear the pump running no more, which is about 2 or 3 seconds, you turn the key off. And you want to cycle the key off and on 3 times. And then on the 4th time, you want to go ahead and start the car. This time we don't appear to have any fuel leaking. And the car fired right up. So we're good to go. You want to store your wires, put them back in the zip tie. Your wiring harness coming off your pump assembly goes into that rubber grommet, so you want to put that back whenever you go to button this up. Put this cover back on, just check it under the car maybe in a week or so. Make sure you're not leaking fuel after a fill up. If you made it this far, I trust that you found some information that was either useful or entertaining, so go ahead and hit the like button. And if you would like notification of future videos that I post, please subscribe to the channel. I appreciate your support. You can follow me on other social media apps by looking for @RobertDIY. Some form of that should bring up the other channels that I have on places like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and so forth. If for some reason you need some more personal help, go to my website at robertdiy.com and use the phone number that I have posted there to send me a text message, or you can email me. If you have questions or comments, please make a comment below. And if you'd like to make some kind of financial contribution to what I got going on here, go to my channel and hit the more link at the end of the introduction statement, and it'll show you different ways that you can support me financially. Again, thanks for watching. I hope you have a great day.